Hi, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions related to production every single day. So if you have something about digital technology, the internet, or whatever, we're here for it. Courtney Gooden from Los Angeles, California is our reader today. Courtney, what's our first question?
Hey, Bill, from London, England. Stephen Burns asks, I've been looking for purchasing a TP-Link 5 GHz N300 for point-to-point connection of an Ethernet signal. What are the panel's opinion of this device, and can you recommend anything better with a similar price range? It can link line of sight up to around 15 kilometers.
Alex Lindsay is going to help you out. Alex?
15 kilometers is a long way. I don't know if I can find anything that's going to hit the same price. What we've done in the past has been typically ubiquity air fiber. And even then we've gone about 10 miles with it, if I remember correctly. So, but that's been about the farthest we've gone. We've shot with it, but it's a lot more expensive than what you're looking at. I don't think this is going to work. I don't know if it'll work at that range. Maybe, but I think that if you're really trying to get the full range of 15 kilometers, you're going to need something pretty beefy. I think that I'd be thinking of a $2,000 or $3,000 investment.
Yeah, that seems like the kind of things that AT&T and others use for point-to-point on mountaintops, and 15 kilometers is a long way. Courtney, got a suggestion?
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong one. He says 5 gigahertz, but this one is the TP-Link N300 Wi-Fi. But this is 2.4 gigahertz, which will have a longer range because it can punch a little further at 2.4 gigahertz. It won't be quite as high a speed of throughput. But yeah, these are designed just to punch through walls in your house and not necessarily go outdoors line of sight between 2 points because they radiate, omnidirectionally in all directions. You'd be better off finding, you can get, if you can find a Wi-Fi unit that has removable antennas, you can unscrew the antenna if it has the N-type connectors on it and screw on a directional antenna like a shark fin. That is designed to transmit in a unidirection. So it concentrates all of its receiving and transmitting energy in a single direction. So TP-Link also makes those. They make amplified antennas that you can plug onto an existing Wi-Fi router. So if it has removable antennas, you could look at that. That might be a cheap solution for you using an existing router that has screw-on antennas.
But Wi-Fi at 15 kilometers, my assumption, and I don't know much about this, but rain or anything would probably destroy signals at that distance. Am I thinking correctly, either of you?
Especially at 5 gigahertz, doesn't travel near as far, or penetrate as well.
Okay. Stephen, hope that helped a little bit at least. Next question.
All right, next one comes in from Peter Rosato in Las Vegas, Nevada. QR Pop was discussed yesterday during Extra Hours. It does not seem to be available for download in the App Store. And I found, all I found was a GitHub repository on the web.
Alex, can you help him out?
Yeah, it appears that there's a test flight, a public test flight that they put out maybe a year ago, and maybe that's where I downloaded it. I don't know. I was, looking around for something. QR Factory is what I've used for a long time. And the problem with it was I just didn't feel like they were moving forward, so they weren't getting all the new designs that my clients wanted and everything else. And so I went to I don't know where I found QR Pop. I don't think I found it on GitHub. I usually find GitHub repositories to be too fiddly. And so I tend to look at them and go, oh, no, I'm not going to use that. But there is a test flight for developers. And I think maybe that's where if you're a developer for Apple, if you've signed up for that, you may be able to find it there.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Richard Royer in Barton, Vermont. Regarding cable ties, long rolls of generic Velcro are available at Harbor Freight, usually on the back wall. A little dab of glue on a wrap around the cable keeps the tie with the cable. I've also folded the Velcro over and secured with an islet.
Well, a lot of possibilities here, Alex.
Yeah, I think we talked about this I think maybe over the weekend. But I really like that the cable ties with the eyelets, and so I like to pull it through and then close it off. I know that there's a lot of them that are general, but then I end up trying to find them, and they're on the ground and it's not no mas. so I like to have them all attached to the cables securely.
From my drawer beside me, now in colors, which
yes,
helps.
exactly. The funny thing is, I'm really, you get into these and you get really, there's a certain width, which for me is about 1 centimeter that I prefer, and a certain thickness, which is as thin as possible, which is what I prefer. If they get a little thick, then they get caught up in things, and so you do get really particular about them. The ones that are like a little less than a half a centimeter wide, I just don't like them, so, and they're oftentimes a little thicker. And so it is funny how picky you can get about Velcro ties, but I do buy them like Courtney, I think Courtney, I buy them in big rolls. So they're just big, they're rolled and they just pull them off one after the other to put them on.
I agree, but I did get one batch that was very thin. They worked, but they didn't last very long. And it seems like without a certain Velcro nap on them, on the fuzzy side, they can really wear out pretty quick. So it's something to watch for. Courtney, you have some intelligence for Velcro?
Yeah, there's these ones that are available at Home Depot that I've been buying that are come in 2 rolls, a gray and a black, and they're in side by side. But the problem is they're only about this long. So for short cables, they're great. And they're only about, a little more than a 1/4 inch wide. They're great for short cables and stuff, or just to loop around a hank of cable if it's less than about 20 feet long or 25 feet long. But other than that, I have to string them together one into another. They do have the slot in them so that you can wrap them around and pull it through the slot and anchor it to the cable. So that's handy. And they're pretty cheap. It's like $9 for 2 rolls of it. And that's really cheap for Velcro.
And just in case you want to up your Velcro tie wrap game, our neighbors at NAB last year with our booth, a couple of spaces over, was Riptie. And Riptie has been a name in these kind of Velcro wraps. And they have all sorts of things way up the line to very big wraps for heavy cables. So if you want to go serious about it, you might want to inquire about that to them. Alex?
Yeah, the one of the things that Riptie does that is great is that you can customize them, so you can have them all with your own logo on them, and you do get them back much faster when your logo is on the cable. We find that is a very effective way. The other thing that we like to do is mark our cables by putting when you make the cable, we will label it with shrink tubing. So we'll basically put a little label on it and then shrink it in there, and that makes sure that people know whose cable it goes back to. It's really hard to figure that out at the end of a big show when everyone's rolling cables, and so it makes it nicer when you have your logo securely attached to the cable. Tim McCullough said that Velcro bah humbug sticks to itself and every cable around it. Give me number 4 black tie line, and I have to say that if the Velcro is sticking to everything around it, you're using it wrong.
Yeah, the problem I had with trick line, I used to use that for a while, and most of my cables had a piece of trick line that I had tied around. I had the 2 ends, but they did fray at the end. I didn't want to take the time to take out a torch and melt the ends.
I don't know. It's much faster to Velcro is a lot faster than than tying cable.
But to each their own. If you found a strategy that works for you, God bless you. Let's move on to the next question.
Coming in from Buenos Aires, Argentina, Heltron says, Instagram Live on the iPhone 16 USB-C audio devices. I've had good results having Instagram recognize the Shure MV7 Plus and use its headphone jack out. Is there a good way to get a Rode Wireless Go 2 detected as a mic and still have a headphone output?
Were you able to think this one through, Alex? Is there any way you can figure it out?
No. Can't do that.
Okay.
It's one way. It's not designed that way. You're using it way past its design principles here. It'll work as a mic for you, but it's not going to send something back out because it's not going to recognize it. It doesn't have you have a receiver on one end and a transmitter on the other end. And in the Shure, you have a 2-way connection as a full-on interface. And so, yeah, you're not going to be able to do that.
Sorry about that, Jonathan. Let's move to the next question.
Next one comes in from Brian Carney in Wheaton, Illinois. I've been trying to use AdobeFirefly to try out their translation services. However, I keep getting a message that the service is unavailable. Upon investigation, I found this service is not available to people in Illinois and Texas, but can't find out why. Any idea?
That's intriguing. Must be a regulation thing, Alex. Have you?
Yeah, there's I know that I don't know about Illinois, but I know that Texas is Texas has its own like privacy laws and stuff like that they passed last year, I think, or the year before, and it kind of gummed up the whole system. So I think that's what's happening there, and Illinois must have done some of that too. So,
yeah, kind of smelled like local regulation.
Yeah, states doing weird things. Yeah.
Oh, that never happens.
Yeah, exactly. We're from California. We do lots of them. They just pick, like we do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, oh, we're just going to make a law about something. It doesn't make any sense. So Texas and Illinois they were like, hey, I see what California's doing. Let's do some weird stuff too.
Next question.
Comes in from Detroit, Michigan, and Scott Wasserman says, Alex has talked about how he marks long cables to keep the loop consistent. What do you use to mark the cables?
Alex, you want to talk through that? Yeah,
so we just use cable. Literally we use usually it's shrink wrap on top of just regular printed. What comes out of your little label printer that goes onto it. And what we do is we put the logos at a specific distance apart, and you just pull the logos together. So it's our logo or whatever. You pull the logo together, and then you finish wrapping the cable. It's just the first one. It's the first length. You'll see a logo on one of our cables. It's here. Another one that's over here. You just pull. And the people who don't know, just roll them however they roll them. People who do know, it's heat shrink wrapping tubing is what Mickey pointed out. It's not shrink wrap. It's heat shrink tubing. Yes. So we pull it. We pull those together, and what that does is it means that we can make them very specific, so that all of our 10-foot, 25-foot, 50-foot all have the same diameter, which means they all fit inside of each other. That's why we designed it, and they also look really nice on the wall. Like when you see them when you see someone with purpose on some purpose on a wall, you see all these cable. Anybody who walked in, I don't have a big warehouse anymore, but anybody who walked into our warehouse would look up at these cables that when they're measured like that, they'd be like, "How do you do that?" like they're all the same, Like it was definitely a statement that I liked.
Overall, it's called attention to detail. And if somebody will do it with their cables, they may do it with all the rest of the little things in your production.
I think I've mentioned it before. I got a job one time when they were recommending us and they asked for a wiring diagram, and I sent them the wiring diagram. And I have a weird thing about lines needing to be the same distance apart from each other when they're in a wiring diagram. And so I'll when I finish a wiring diagram, I'll spend about 30 minutes just going and just kind of moving everything around so it looks nice. And I sent it to them, and they said we were going towards you either way, but as soon as we saw the wiring diagram and it was so clean and everything was so perfect, they were like, "Yeah, this is the right person." Like, this is and they hired us, and we ended up doing a lot of work for them. So.
Next question.
Sorry, I clicked on it. Nothing happened. Rayon Smith in Trinidad, West Indies has a question. Have you or would you use a piece of grip gear like this on pro events? The Pigail Double Baby Hanger, and he has a link to it.
Oh, I love production terminology. Jesse Kester is going to start us off here. Jesse?
So short answer, no, I don't have everything plugged in, so I can't show you what it is, but it's like a baby pin with an arm that kind of coils around in a spiral that you wrap onto a C-stand or something like that. And as long as there's downward pressure on it, it shouldn't move at all because it's got a rubber grip on it. So as long as you're pushing down, that coil is tight against the C-stand. But if somebody bumps it vertically, you got that kind of thing going on, and I would not put any gear that could possibly break on something like that. That said, it would be really nice in the studio if we had like a horizontal beam or a couple of vertical beams, and we used those as coat racks for people who are coming into the studio, because it has a really unique look and it's a production look. So it would be, it sounds like I'm insulting and saying, yeah, it would make a good coat rack, but I actually believe it would make a really nice kind of unique, interesting designed bit of accessory for the studio, but not a production piece.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Jesse. The design depends on a couple of things. A, gravity, and B, friction, so that rubber coating on the thing. And plus, it only works with one specific size Matthews baby stand with and only a 3-riser. So a larger diameter stand, it probably isn't going to work on. A smaller diameter stand, it probably isn't going to work on. Yeah, if you have everything right and nobody ever bumps into it to take the weight off of it to cause it to slide all the way to the bottom and crashing your light to the ground, I wouldn't depend on it. They did show it, hanging your backpack or the tape rolls on it. You could do it for that, hanging anything that is not critical onto it, but I wouldn't use it for hanging anything like lights or, grip equipment or anything that could be blown in the wind, like diffusion, especially if you're outdoors. Once the weight comes off of it, it's going to crash to the ground.
I don't know about that long hanger out, but I will say that this little gizmo is one of the more useful things that I've ever bought. And what this is, most of you have come across those wire shelves. Costco and everybody else sells them. They're like restaurant racks. They're entirely made out of wire. I found these guys, these clip on the upright poles, and they're incredibly solid. If somebody made something like this for a C-stand, man, I would use it all the time. They come in single and double hooks and things like that. And in terms of a place to hang a coat or hang a viewfinder or something else that's on a lanyard really quickly, man, I bought a half dozen of those, and they've always been in use every time since I bought them. So anyway, little things. Next question.
Comes from Jesse Kester in Glendale, and here on the panel. 10 years ago, EF was the mid-level go-to as a mount, figuratively, and it fades to black when we're looking down the literal barrel of LPL E-mount lenses and a handful of others. What ecosystems are you buying into, and what is their heir apparent to the EF throne?
Oh, boy, this is a tough question after Micro Four Thirds came in and messed up everything. Alex, what's your go-to?
Yeah, I don't have any. I think that it's whatever I'm using at the time. I hate to say it, but it's really hard to be specific anymore. I think that I'm buying I'm doing a lot of shooting with both Sonys and Blackmagics, and then, of course, we go to PL typically when we go to the larger Sonys and the Aries, we're kind of going into a different, so PL is kind of where we end up with larger productions. But for the smaller productions, I think that I'm kind of split between the Blackmagic and the Sonys. So, the Blackmagic stuff, I still have a ton of Canon glass, so that'll hold me for a little while. But the new stuff has been a lot of E-mount because of the Sonys.
Yeah, it's been a problem for everybody I know who's coming particularly out of the photo era where we all pretty much used Sony mounts, or Canon mounts, and EF glass was pretty much the standard for as you were coming up in the business. But yeah, once you get into PL, and there's so much more connectivity with rocker-style zooms and things like that. Mickey McIntosh said, Jesse Kester responding to you, PL and LPL will be around for a long time, so don't feel like you have to move away too quickly. Next question.
Oh, from a newbie here on the panel is Alex Lindsay in Novato, California, says, I have a new toy.
Please, 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 show and tell.
It's not going to look very good on the camera, but this is fun. So this is what Mickey had referred to as the bike seat. This is a DPA 5100. So hidden inside of this is a 5.1 mic. So it's it's not ambisonic. This is a 5.1 microphone it's got a little mount on the bottom, and it's got this cable. It's going to be a very long cable to use in the field, but I guess it depends on what you're doing. But it's got this little hook up here, and then it has just goes out to 6 channels here. So I'm going to take it out over this week. We're going to be doing some testing with it, but we're hoping to use it at NAB to give it a shot. So anyway, I have a bunch of other the bike seat. Yes, I have some other ambisonics, and so one of the things that we're going to do this Saturday, my son and I are going to go out and we're going to shoot with some ambisonic. We're going to shoot with this. We're going to kind of compare and contrast in the same environments, so that we can kind of see what's the difference in the sound in the record based on these different microphones. It's pretty expensive, and DPA lent it to us for towards NAB. So we'll be playing with it, but stay tuned. It should be kind of fun.
It looks like fun, and it does look like I bought bike seats that look exactly like that. So yes, Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be careful to mount it up above the level that anyone would try to sit on it.
No low boy stands for that one.
Be very careful about that. You might record something you don't want to hear. I was going to ask you said it has 5 elements in it and 5 discrete channels.
I think it has 6 elements in it. Yeah, 6? I think it's.
But
got
it doesn't
6
use the ambisonic matrix encoding. Though.
No, it's straight. It's just straight 5.1. So it's just 5. Here it is 5.1, and so Mickey and I talked about it a little bit, and I think that there's some advantages for us when we're streaming. It just keeps it simple. We don't have to do any more conversion to it. So, but we're going to see how it sounds. But we're pretty excited about it. It could be a cool mic to capture the stuff with.
Don't forget, we're taking your questions. Mukana is our system in the back end. If you want to use it, go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email, and then you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs there. That's officehours.global/join if you want to be in the back end system and vote on things and make a difference in the show. Next question.
From Ryan Ewell in Kilgally, Rwanda. Looking to equip a small team of 6 with basic multimedia computers. The M4 Mac Mini looks great for price performance, but by the time you add a webcam, screen, keyboard, trackpad, UPS, you're basically at an M4 MacBook Air price. Any thoughts?
Alex, what do you think?
I mean, one of the advantages is that, in Kigali, there is, as Ryan knows, there's obviously what he's pointing out to is that there is sometimes some inconsistency in the power supply. So you end up with needing to be able to work on it. So having a laptop or 2 might make sense. But what I will say is that, also in Africa, we tend to have not the cleanest power. And so then you end up losing computers where it's really expensive to fix them, like laptops and so on and so forth. So my tendency would probably be towards a Mac Mini. I think you're actually going to find it to be also more powerful than the MacBook Air, because the MacBook Air is going to have heat issues that the Mac Mini is not going to have over time. So, it's incredibly fast. My son did his first Resolve edit over the weekend on an M4 on the base unit of the M4. Man, is that thing screaming! It's just so fast to do just about everything. So. Pretty good machine. I think I'd probably still lean towards it because now you have the modularity if something goes down to go get it fixed. So I'd lean towards the Mini.
Jesse Kester.
I would consider, if it's meant to be a gift, I would consider the laptops because that's easier to receive as a gift and repurpose in their own ways.
I think he's building. I think he's equipping a team. So I think it's a production team. And
then. If it's something that might end up being repurposed, I would say Mac Minis are the way to go because then you can move the monitors around, you can move the computers around, you can divorce everything and repurpose it endlessly. But if it's, like for some teachers or something, just give them the laptop and be done with it. Make it as easy as possible to digest for the recipient.
Alex?
Yeah, and the other issue is that the Mac Mini has a lot more I/O on it. So there's going to be a lot more connections on the front and the back than you're going to get from the MacBook Air only has 2 USB-Cs. And I can barely, I fill up the Mac Mini immediately. Like it's all full like of stuff that's in it. So I think that that's the problem with it there.
And I'll just weigh into this. I have both a MacBook Air and Pro, and both of them have M2 series chips. And I've been surprised. One thing I've been surprised with is they do not run hot. Quite the opposite. They run very cool. I agree with Alex about the 2 ports on the Airs. You must have a useful hub to make them do anything complex. But the new M4s, I think, have an amazing amount of bandwidth. So I'd be interested the next time I do an upgrade on that Air to figure out whether the M4 Airs have enough horsepower with that chip to run a whole suite, maybe one of those 11-port OWC adapters and eliminate the port problems. But, continue your look and see how it works for you. Next question.
From Nikhil Kamkolar in South Brunswick, it says, I'm creating an online course. Are there any tools in DaVinci Resolve, ideally, that would make it easy to highlight sections of the user interface via animated graphics, a template library, etc., that anyone finds useful?
Jesse Kester, start us off.
There are tools. I don't know how easy it has to be considered easy by you. I would not start with, they have like a highlight or point out plugin under their text or something like that where it draws a little arrow to the thing. Catastrophic useless, because if you start to animate keyframes on it, the whole thing collapses immediately. Like you can only place it down as it's built and let it exist as it's built. So if you're going to be stuck to as it's built, you'd want to be bringing in animated elements from, like a graphics pack where the lines animate and the circles draw and the arrows and all that stuff is beautiful. Or you want to be building internally using something like Fusion, but that's lift. Like the animation tools in Resolve they take a bit of time to learn, and you might be able to learn just even quicker in After Effects or Motion and build your own bespoke little animation elements that you can drop in, using transparency and all that.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, there is a bunch of plugins that Ripple Training does that is for Final Cut and for Motion that do this exceptionally well, but I don't know if they make them for Resolve. So, but you may want to look at FX Factory as well. They make a lot of stuff for Resolve as well as Motion and other things like that. But that is the as far as pre-built goes, the ones that I've seen that Ripple Training built, they built all of these tools, everything you're asking for. But unfortunately, they don't work in Resolve. They work in Final Cut and in Motion. So if you're willing to move over to those to do that part of the element, that part of the process, then you have some tools. I don't know of any that work in Resolve that are just a plug and play the way that those ones are.
Yeah, call-outs from Ripple Training is, I think, that what
they have so many. They have arrows, they have call-outs, they have a whole bunch of. They really figured out that part because they needed them themselves.
Yes. I will also note Motion VFX is a great plug-in manufacturer that has
That's what I meant, by the way, Motion VFX. I said FX Factory, but Motion VFX is the one you want to look at.
Yeah, they're very high quality, and you can't go wrong, and they have tons of plugins like that. And I'm pretty sure they have a whole system for Resolve as well as the ones for Final Cut and Motion. Next question.
Another question from Rayon Smith in Trinidad in the West Indies. This clip shows a guy's spent shell ricochet into his gun as he changes a clip. The power of 360 video. Has the panel seen 360 highlight something like they've never would have noticed otherwise? And he has a link to a clip there.
Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of, when you're shooting video of in 360, there's all kinds of things that you can do. One of the big things is just stabilization and being able to pan and tilt inside of that 360 image as long as it's high enough resolution. This is something that Insta360 has been doing for a long time very effectively. So the other thing that Insta360 has done is the ability to swing the camera around, like around you, and then be able to retract that back in to do these kind of spinning shots that would be very difficult to make otherwise. So there's a lot of tools, and 360 is a really 16:9 inside of 360 is a pretty interesting format by itself.
One of the things I saw on the web yesterday was a young woman was teeing off the golf course. It wasn't done in 360, but it's that kind of, you're there at a moment it happens. She hit her great drive, right near the pin, and the tee that the ball was on flipped up and landed in her back pocket. I mean, what are the chances? That's when you want whatever camera you've got that has the highest resolution, the best capabilities rolling. Let's go to the next question.
Next one comes in from Liberty White in Atlanta, Georgia. Alex made a great point yesterday about TED or TED and how they plan to the TED Talks, I guess, how they plan the flow of their events. What other ways do you see events maximize the shelf life of their content recorded after the event?
Jesse Kester's going to start us off. Jesse?
It's so simple, but so many people miss it. Good audio. If you want your content to survive more than the moment in that room, everybody speaking needs to be mic'd properly, mixed properly, and then delivered properly for life online afterwards.
Alex?
Yeah, I agree with Jesse. I think that the hard part really is that it's very hard to make good content that is easy to watch later when people are standing on stage with open speakers. so it's a big challenge to get that right. In general, while there's a little bit more sibilance, we tend to use headset mics over lavs. There are some highly directional lavs that are available, but we find that the speakers very invariably pull them to the side, and we end up with people making some pretty hard decisions about how to keep that going. So we found that the labs that we have to use are usually pretty big, and then they don't actually work as well as we'd like. So headset mics, still omnidirectional, but just closer to the source is usually where we kind of lean towards it. If you're inside, I just want to say, if you're inside and you put the mic in the right place, you don't need the softy on it. It looks weird. Like, I don't understand. Like, I always look at that going, I don't understand, like, why you did that. Like, every time I see it, I'm just like, what were you guys doing? Like, why, what, why? The key is that they'll say, well, it's got wind. If you put it, you take the mic and you put it 1 inch behind the corner of the mouth. That's it. And then you take your thumb and you put it here and you grab onto it and you pull it out just a little bit. And then you pull the little rubber thing up to where it touches your skin. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to work great. That's all you got to do. Like, it's not that hard. So anyway, but you don't have to put the stupid thing at the end. So it's just like, it's just every time I see it, I'm like, who did that? And so anyway, so the headset mics, otherwise they work really well. But I will say that really good camera shots, so singles on the cameras. One of the things that we do is we coach our speakers to do basically a walk in post. So we tell the speakers, here's the deal. If you, and some speakers, big speakers, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. You just let them go. There's some people who know how, they do this all the time. They know what they're doing. So you just go, okay, you back away. But if a speaker that's going to listen to you, what you want them to do is you put spikes on the ground and you say, if you stand in this place when it matters, like when you say something that you want the world to see, stand on one of these and don't move. And just don't move your feet. Just stand there. And what happens is our camera is going to come in close and it's going to get this beautiful shot of you with soft depth of field and everything else. And it's going to be epic, because the lighting is set up for these spikes, right? And so, and you see the speakers who get it, man, they'll stand right on that spike and they'll look out and they'll be like, which way do I turn? And so they get it. And then those are the things that we use all the time, but it depends on the speakers. I mean, speakers some of them are really malleable. They just want to do the best job and they want to get the most out of it. And they're usually the most successful ones. And then there's a bunch of them that are just like, they're just the way they're going to be, and they know a bunch of things. So you let them do what they're going to do. You stay out of the way, but you have to feel them out pretty quickly to know which one they're going to go. There, but them standing and posting, walking and posting. So you walk as you set up the shot, set up what you're going to say. So you're explaining something in between, and you go to the next spike, and then you turn and you stop and you start to talk. And you see well-trained speakers will do that all the time. They'll walk while they're saying something that sets up the next thing they want to say. Then they're going to stand in one place and then say the thing that matters, and then they're going to move on to something else. And they all know what that is, and it's just like an actor hitting their marks. They're, and speakers, unfortunately, for the most part, they got to where they were without having to have a lot of, without oftentimes having to have much training, and so they're not very good at that. And they don't, and then they've gotten too big and they don't care anymore. So then they don't understand why none of their stuff ends up used later. So anyway, so that's the, but I would, try to find people to do that. But the main thing is that the other thing to remember is that when we do events like this, if you give people good cameras and good mics, and you do virtual events that are around your major event, the content that you get from those is going to be much nicer. Not if they use their webcams and their built-in mics on their laptop, but if you send them kits, if you look at this show, you can imagine everybody having this kind of video for all the shorts that you want to use when they're talking. It's just a lot better content, even than what they're going to get on stage.
If you have questions you want to get into the show queue as quickly as possible, you can also use askofficehours.global as a URL. Just type that into your web browser, askofficehours.global, or you can use the QR code that I just tossed up on the screen. That's askofficehours.global. That'll get you in quick. Next question.
Yeah, this next one came in from that QR code entry from David Brady in New York City. Lon Seidman, hackintoshed a Mac Pro trash can with open core patcher. Has anyone done this to modernize older Macs, if only for fun?
Alex?
I just don't do a lot for fun. There's got to be some reason that I was going to do it, and I think Lon did it because he's going to get a lot of views out of it. So the reason he did it is because, and I just don't have a channel that would support that, I think. And so I think about those kinds of things, but and then I go back to work. So I haven't done any of those things.
It's nice that people do that for fun. And that old hardware, it's nice that some people are keeping them going. But I got to admit, the last couple of generations of all computers have gone so far, so fast, that the idea that I would have something other than a niche function and I would want to do it on something other than the computers that I have now that are so much faster than what I used to have in the past just befuddles me a little bit. But that's me. If you're one of those people, have fun. Next question.
Next one comes in from Davis, California. Lois Richter asks, someone handed me a Sandisk thumb drive that has different connectors on the two ends. What? How would that work?
Courtney, what are your thoughts?
I can show you because I happen to have one and I use it all the time. And notice it's attached to my overstuffed keyring so that I always have this to be able to transfer files. It has a nice loop on the end, and it has a USB-C connector over here and a USB-A connector over here. So regardless of what kind of computer you come across, if you have to transfer some files to your phone, and I use this for going from my phone, getting files from my phone to my laptop. If I don't have the right kind of cable, I could just transfer them onto this. I think there's 128 gigs in it. And they sell these at Costco. And you can protect one side, but not the other in your pocket. So I usually keep it this way because a lens is harder to get into the USB-C than it is to the USB-A. So that's what I use it for. Very handy.
Lois, hopefully that solves the problem for you. Let's go to the next question.
From someone named Kent in Madison, Ohio, says, with uploading Opus Clips, do you see a decrease in view when scheduling through Opus.pro compared to manually uploading with a phone? Anyone have thoughts on the app later.com for scheduling videos uploading throughout the day?
Alex, what do you think?
We haven't used later.com. Definitely have. I believe that Opus will also allow you to schedule it. And we haven't compared those two things back and forth because we don't use the phone typically to do anything with Opus. So we're typically using desktops to manage that process. So I'm not sure how the phone would affect it. It shouldn't really depends on what platform you're sending it to, but where it comes from as a video probably. It does matter when you're doing live. Because some platforms will benefit a live encoding from a phone. They will go on a wider distribution than an RTMP stream. But for the post-production, I've never heard of anyone doing it more or less based on the source.
Next question.
Comes in all the way from Tromsø, Norway. Kjetil Gervaisvold says, we have a meeting with an event planner we already work closely with. They are all for physical conferences at hotels, etc. We try to push fully digital productions to our clients. How to convince this event planner to consider a digital solution?
Jesse Custer, start us off here.
To every hammer, everything looks like a nail or whatever. Be careful with what you're doing because we work with NPOs and stuff like that. And they were doing like a dinner and a keynote presentation. I kept asking them, like, why don't you guys want to do an online component? And eventually they just said, like, the audience that we're talking to is 70, 80-year-olds. They account for 80% of our donations. This is how we talk to them. This is how they talk to us. And there was absolutely no reason to move it online, befuddle their top donors, lose all of their money for the year, just because we like playing with cameras and ATEMs. So find out why they want these things in person and in conference rooms. There might be incredibly legitimate reasons that you're not intuiting that they need to tell you directly. And if those reasons make sense, then I would stop pushing for the online thing.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the big thing is to look at one of the things that we bring up with clients, or we've been bringing up with clients, is the fact that there's the secret that no one wants to talk about, which is that no one is coming to your conference for the content. So people have this whole thing, they have tracks and they have all this stuff, but no one's coming for the content. They're coming to see other people. They're coming to network. They're coming and they want to see some content too while they're there. But this is what Ted figured out. This is what we were talking about, I think, over the weekend. Is Ted figured out that no one comes for the content, but the content provides an important context to have conversations with people later. So the way that, I think that to think about digitally is take all those tracks that you were going to do and put them either before, after, or both the conference itself, and have online tracks. The main thing is you have to actually invest in the kits that people are using and not put out the trash that almost everybody does with an online conference. The problem with digital conferences is people look at them and they go, oh, this is going to be horrible. And part of a big chunk of why it's horrible is because they're using digital backgrounds and horrible cameras and bad audio, and it's not very well organized. And so you combine all those things together, and why would you do a digital event? That doesn't make any sense at all. So when you start having real mics and real cameras and things for people, and this is an investment of the same amount of investment it would take you to bring when I'm a speaker, someone typically pays me some money. They fly me in, they buy me my meals. There's a couple other things that go on. It's probably, the total cost outside of what they pay me is probably $3,000, $4,000. If you took that and just spent it on kits for all your speakers so that they had those instead of flying them in, it would be a really nice conference. So, but spread that. But think about not trying to replace the conference, but trying to basically take out all the stuff that is a distraction from people being able to be in the conference. They still have a physical conference. They still go to it. They have a handful of talks, and they spend the rest of the time doing what they really came to do, which is to network. And I think that's I think that helps. It still gives everybody all the content. And here's the other thing that it does: it starts to get them to see what digital events could look like. But they have to commit to the whole thing. A half-baked bread is still dough. And so just saying we're going to do digital conferences and let them use webcams is not going to work. They'll just decide it was a disaster. Tim McCulloch said what happened to content is king. It's never been king, I'll argue. I will argue that that content is the honeypot. Community is king. So the content just brings people in. So there you go.
Don't forget, there are a couple other things you can watch on the Office Hours process here. Extra Hours on Monday for those around the world when the main show timing doesn't fit. It's in the evenings. That's every Monday night. The Rundown is a new show on Thursday evenings with David Paskin, and that's fun to watch. And we have something going on tonight. We're doing a kind of a special, so keep track of the Office Hours website, and you'll see what's going on. Next question.
The next one comes in from Jesse Kester here on the panel from Glendale, California. Says, can you give us a quick refresher on what the Office Hours presence will be at NAB this year?
Ooh, Alex, can you illuminate us? What's current thinking?
Current thinking, we're still working on a couple details, and mostly it has to do with some instability in my schedule. Last week I was booked for a job on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of NAB, so somewhere else. So I'm going to bring the kit that we're planning to do. We're going to do some coverage on Sunday, and then we need to look at what teams are available or if anyone wants to continue to do more coverage throughout the week. So, but I'll have to be in Southern California by Sunday night. So that's that changed things a little bit. This is the cost of it being me still working in production. so we're trying to figure that out. A lot of it was kind of unfolding, which is what's been a part of the delay. But we have a great kit that we're putting together. I have the new 12G and better, arriving I think on Thursday. We've got this 5.1 mic. We've got the live view. We're putting together all the bits and pieces here. So we should have a great live view kit. We're planning to use a live view kit. We're not going to have a booth. It was just too much to manage. So the plan is to do a live view walk and talk is the primary thing that we're going to do. And then we're still talking about how we may do a couple other things as well.
There you go. Next question.
From Nikhil Kamkolkar in South Brunswick. Any thoughts on using Movavi or Movavi, if you pronounce it, or Movavi screen recording software compared to OBS for the PC? Usecase is capturing Unreal Engine user interface elements, which can have a lot of tiny text on the screen.
Alex, can you talk to this?
Yeah, if I was serious about this, I'd probably end up using an external recorder. So when I do most of my video training, if I do video training, I record my screen to an external recorder. And the reason for that is it takes up a lot less overhead on the computer. So especially if you're doing something in Unreal Engine and you have it's a lot heavier. Unreal Engine is going to push the computer pretty hard. I just want Unreal Engine to look at the output as a separate monitor, not as a, and you can still record in 4K. Think about, and I haven't tried to do it with Unreal Engine, but sometimes you can make the elements bigger so that they are, viewable. But I would strongly consider thinking about an external recorder as opposed to trying to record. I use a very old Pix 240 to do those things because I can just plug the HDMI cable and hit record and see what I'm recording and go and move on from there. But I would recommend not using a screen recorder when you're doing something that's graphics heavy.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. How do I clone a working Mac M1 Mini to another Mac M1 Mini with Sonoma?
Alex.
I highly recommend against it. I am really not a fan of cloning. Just build stuff up from scratch. It takes a little bit more time, and it's highly worth it. The only time we do that is when we carefully build a system that is going to be the core system, and we want to reset computers to it. So we have production computers that that we'll send out. We will carefully set them all up so that they're exactly the way we want them. We then clone them, and when they come back from production, we just blank them out and go and move forward. But if I was going to do anything other than this is exactly the way we want to have it set up, and we're never going to change it, or when we change it, we're going to change it for everything. Cloning is a bad idea. You end up with all kinds of basically what we would call ghosts in the machine, where it's just things aren't quite tied together the way that they should be, and you end up with little idiosyncrasies that are hard to nail. So I would I think everybody here agrees that you should not do that. almost everybody I'm looking down at the thing. Yeah. So there you go.
There are a couple of circumstances. I agree with Alex 100%, and I have a thumb drive. That's my basic system. And if I'm going to reprovision a new machine, I go to that thumb drive, install it, and run the installer off of that because I don't want any cruft in there. I will say that I've used Migration Assistant, which is Apple's process for taking a known computer and mirroring it, imaging it essentially onto a new computer. But there is not a circumstance where I haven't looked at that original computer to make sure that I haven't done something with it that I don't want to migrate. And migrate does have some, do you want to move this class of asset over or not? So there's some flexibility in there. But overall, I think Alex's advice is really good.
And Ryan from Kigali pointed out that he says, I wonder how to manage a classroom of Macs without cloning. And we use it for that. But that's the time to use it is in production or in a classroom where every night or every week you just blank the computers out. But that's been a carefully structured image that is designed to do exactly that.
If you like what we do at Office Hours and like to help a little bit, there's a couple of ways you can do that. First of all, you can volunteer at officehours.global. Volunteer, become part of the team that makes that possible. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the final way, donate if you'd like to. Make a contribution to us. Donate at officehours.global. Donate. / donate. Why am I getting confused about this? It's really simple. Anyway, next question.
Next one comes in from Madison, Indiana. Roscoe Jones asked, does any of this interest you in this free pre-NAB event on media technology, or are they usually just sales pitches?
Courtney's going to start us off here.
Well, the thing that he's linked to here is this from TV Tech is a tech leadership summit. And they've got some heavy hitters down here. They've got, somebody for TV Tech, but they have the president of SMPTE is there speaking at 12:05 and 12:20. Then they have this panel with some pretty heavy hitters from CBS in the Bay Area and CW Sports and on the next generation of news and sports. So maybe it's just kind of promotional, but these don't seem to be guys that are associated with any particular product, but more with broadcast services. So it might be interesting if you're in that business of TV sports or news to attend something like this. They tend to be kind of pricey. I'm not sure what the price of these are. Maybe they're free if you're a registered member of if you've signed up for NAB as a registered person for the talks, but you'll have to look into it.
Jesse Kester.
Yeah, if you're interested in NAB, but you really hate sales pitches, boy, do I have some bad news for you.
What Jesse may be implying is a lot of these kind of big pre-things are a way for the bigger companies to assemble an audience and put their newest and latest and greatest stuff in front of them. And so in some cases, it's a sales pitch.
And it's free, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of these are.
This one's a free one. I just registered for it, so we'll see if we can. I don't know if I'll have time to actually watch it, but that's the problem they have with free. But what they've collected was my email, which is what I think that oftentimes the goal here is not so much to sell you on the actual show, but to give you some reason to give them your contact information, which I was okay with giving them.
Yeah, I think Alex and I have both been on the press pass list for a long time, and we get lots and lots of invitations where they want you in a room, and often they'll feed you or have a breakfast and give you coffee and things like that. And it's a way for them to assemble an audience to get their message out. They're spending a lot of money on NAB participation in a lot of cases, and they want to maximize that. Makes sense. Next question.
Comes from Austin, Texas. Paul Wallace asks, just before the pandemic, we had a Hugh Forrest of South by Southwest on the show. Did office hours have an impact on the way South by Southwest is live streaming many of the interactive film and music events?
Alex, did you ever hear back from Hugh about
I
things?
don't know if we had any impact. Maybe some tangential impact on it, but I'm glad that they're doing it either way. I think it's a great idea for them to, again, this is this idea of moving more of the content. It's not replacing the in-person event, but moving more of the content online to allow the in-person event to be more manageable.
Next question.
Ooh, Jesse Kester from Glendale says, media and production related celebrity sighting. And we've got pictures.
Ooh, please tell us more.
I don't know if this will ping with anyone in this group, but the Wizard of Speed and Time, Mike Jitlov, is alive and well, and he shops at Costco.
Oh, you ran into it at Costco.
I'll leave that up for another moment if you want.
Yeah, I remember his stop motion animation stuff. It's pretty amazing from the 80s and 90s.
Yep, and if you haven't seen his film, it is up on YouTube. You can watch it for free. You'll learn more studying that film for 2 hours than you'll learn in a year of film
Which
school.
film?
It's The Wizard of Speed and Time. It is so dense with information on how to make films creatively. It's just a miracle of a film, and Mike is still a miracle of a man.
Do you want to tell us which Costco there's in case somebody wants to stalk Mike and get an autograph?
I'm not blowing up the spot like that. You got to find out.
Riverside.
All righty. Next question.
Temecula.
From Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. When seeking out training on media productions, are there any disadvantages to using nonprofit sources like public schools or YouTube searches for profit over for-profit choices like a Ripple Training or pre-post NAB seminars?
Alex, what do you think?
In general, I mean, the NAB seminars I think are hard to watch, later because you're not there and they're just a live, recording typically. So Ripple Training is an entirely different thing because it's been organized and figured out, and those guys are really good at what they do there. LinkedIn Learning is another good one that is $25 a month, and it's really easy to there's a lot of stuff there that you can kind of cut through. I think there's a lot of great content on YouTube that you can find that is there. We were talking before the show. I had started my son had started editing something in Resolve, and I've always done all the color correction before I do any editing. And my son had started to he'd about halfway through an hour edit, and I was like, I don't know how to color correct in Resolve after the edit has begun. And so I was searching around for that on YouTube, and I found Jesse. Jesse has a great video on how to do that. And so anyway, so it was the hard, the challenge for me is always when I go to YouTube is that I'm always skipping very quickly. Like I just needed the information that I needed. And so, but I think that there's YouTube is a great, it's probably the number one resource for a lot of people for that kind of thing. I think when you start to pay for it with Ripple Training and with LinkedIn Learning and others, that hopefully they've spent a lot of time making it super organized and giving you kind of a structured, this is some sample files and these are the things that you can do with it and that type of thing. So I think it just depends on that's what you're paying for, is that organization, and hopefully you're saving time. You're trading money for time.
Jesse Kester?
Yeah, the big disadvantage is organization. So the way YouTube works is it doesn't really behoove the channel owner to create 12 straight hours of 20-minute modules, because if the modules don't pick up audience, then you've blown 12 hours. Like, you've just worked hundreds of hours to produce this content that people don't watch. So YouTube really forces its creators to do shorter videos that are on hot topics that people are going to click through out of curiosity. Then they encourage creators to make long-form educational content that builds on concepts throughout a series of modules. And that's really what you're paying for when you're buying into something like Ripple Training, is you're buying into that kind of nurtured ecosystem that's built around long-form conceptual education. That's going to be your biggest disadvantage. Your biggest advantage with something like YouTube is that there's a huge, like almost infinite breadth of knowledge that if you're curious about this, you ping over there. If you're curious about that, you ping over there. And you can kind of ping towards your curiosity as it occurs to you, instead of locking yourself into a longer program that you need to see hour 1 before hour 2 makes sense, before hour 3 makes sense, and so on.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to, are you seeking competence or are you seeking mastery? And for me, and this is how I learned it, how it works for me, if I really want mastery, I want structured training, because I want them to talk me through all the pieces of this puzzle over time that could potentially be useful to me. If I'm looking for competence, I'm doing exactly what has been talked about before. I want to learn how to do this function in this software, and I don't care about anything else. Don't tell me about this secondary stuff while I'm trying to learn what I need now. But for real mastery, I want that. For me, the best way for me to learn is to get an overview of everything it does. And then I can figure out, okay, but I need to concentrate on these 5 elements because those are the ones that day to day are going to help me the most. But I can't tell you the number of times that I said, oh, but I remembered it. Oh, it also does that 8 months down the road when I didn't realize I needed that other thing. But I saw it in the original overview, and now I know I can go seek out the information on that. So it's, to me, the antidote to Swiss cheese learning, which I talk about a lot, which is you learn about these particular topics, but you never fill in the gaps between those topics with all the rest of the information. So it depends on how you need to learn, how you like to learn, and thankfully there are processes for both. Next question.
Next question comes in from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Tommy asked, what's the inaugural special show, and I'm doing air quotes around that, to be about tonight?
Alex?
Yeah, so the specials are going to be, this is what the second hours were before. So we'll be starting these back up again, and this will be tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The team will be starting up the specials discussion, and I actually, off the top of my head, don't have it in front of me, like what we're talking about. It might be in the email. I just realized, I was like, I don't think I have this in front of me. I haven't been, that shows you how much, how great the team is taking it over and taking it away from me. So I don't even know what's happening there. So
I can fill you in on that. We are going to be talking to one of our longtime audio experts, Marty Adius. And Marty is coming in to talk about flat panel speaker technology. There's a whole new thing that's been developed, and he's kind of in the heart of this. And it reminded me a little about once upon a time that Magnapan used to make these really, really flat, thin speakers. They didn't really catch on, but I understand there's a whole new technology that is driving this thing, and Marty is one of the representatives for them, and he's going to be talking to us about exactly how this new flat panel technology works in full-range speakers, particularly for sound reinforcement, for things like that. So that's the show tonight, I think, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific time here through the regular things. And it's another one of those tests we're doing that's running on a different platform. So it's part of office hours, learning and exploring and getting better every single week. So that's what's happening tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific. All right. Thank you all for coming to the show today, for paying attention, for our traditional 3 constituencies, every one of them critical to make this happen. That is our producers, those of you who ask questions and helped us understand everything by coming out in public and saying, I want to learn something about this. To the panelists who show up every week here, every day, and help us understand that with all of their experience. Thank you, panelists who've been here forever. And to our amazing back-end crew, the people that you don't see that are behind the scenes. You'll see some of their names on the credit roll that's about to start. An amazing group of people doing 100 jobs that you can never imagine to make this all work possibly. Kalaalleq traversal today, that's 60,000 miles. That's how far you would have had to travel to get to the expertise you were given today on office hours. That's 97,000 kilometers or 479 million bananas for scale. We'll see you tonight in the other show, and we'll see you tomorrow right here again. Bye-bye.
Do another special show on how to properly scale with bananas. Yeah.
Yes, it's all about the potassium.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to talking to Marty Atias tonight.
Good.
It's going to be fun.
Should be good.
Yeah, he knows a lot about this stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
they had those planar speakers when I was a kid.
Yeah, they've
They've
reinvented everything from what I've understand. I've been reading up in preparation for tonight, so I'm really kind of looking forward to it. It should be interesting.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, I scanned across that YouTube that's in my feed. I'll take a look at it.
Catch you tonight, Bill.